Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first public witness virtually for 2023. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers today. We have Hilda Cruz, we have Yopani Lockhart, and Isael Reyes, who are joining us today. My name is Maria Elena Perales, and on behalf of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange, we welcome you to the first of 3 public witness events this year. Millions of our brothers and sisters are on the move around the world, not by choice, but by desperation. We encounter their stories in the news, their struggles among members of our own communities. We are aware that each migrant story is of anguish, resilience, and survival. We all have stories that need to be told. We all know that someone needs our support. Tonight, we have an opportunity to hear and reflect about our brothers and sisters who continue to wait on the other side of the border to be given an opportunity to apply for asylum. We will also hear about those that have made it across only to be detained. Tonight, we are honored to have Hilda Cruz from the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity share her experience and empower others to stand up and be in solidarity with our most vulnerable among us, our migrant brothers and sisters. I now have the pleasure of introducing you to Hilda, who will lead us in tonight's program. Let us begin by asking God's loving presence and peace to be with us and with our refugee brothers and sisters in our local communities and around the world. Welcome, Hilda.
Thank you, Maria Elena. As always, it is a pleasure to be with you and the Sisters of St. Joseph's. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Misael Reyes. Misael is one of those immigrants who came to the U.S. seeking asylum. He was an unaccompanied minor, and with the help of many who have been accompanying him throughout these years, I have the pleasure of seeing him blossom. And so today, Misael will lead us and center us into prayer. So the prayer is, he will read it in Spanish, but it is written in the slide in English for all of you. So Misael, acompáñanos, por favor.
So do you want to see it?
I will share the screen momentarily.
Okay, there we go. Denny, can you lower that light?
Santísimo, que siempre te acercas, anhelamos la libertad para todo tu pueblo, especialmente tu gente en movimiento. Esperamos el día en que ninguna frontera o cárcel pueda separarnos del amor que compartimos unos con otros y la acogida que estamos llamados a encarnar. Fortalece nuestros corazones, capacítanos para ser audaces y valientes mientras trabajamos juntos hacia la desencarcelación, la abolición y la libertad para todos. Amén.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Misael.
You're welcome.
So my name is Hilda Cruz. I am with Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity. I am now the regional director for this whole region in Southern California, and we focus on helping immigrants, both immigrants who have lived among our community for a very long time, and we also focus on helping those that are arriving at the border and those that are incarcerated because of their immigration status. And so that is what we focus on, but we also invite people to come and join the work and experience what the calling is for all of us people of faith. And so this past April, I, along with 13 others, took on a transformation journey along with the people that you see on the picture, we went on a pilgrimage. For us, a pilgrimage is an act of witness, an act of unity. We, the ones that journey, take on this journey, seek the sacred memory of the local people. And then we invite people to a commitment so that when they come back, they can move forward in a new way. Next slide, please. So we started our journey in Calexico, and this is the day that we were gonna cross over into Mexicali. Mexicali and Calexico are right next door. And when we no longer saw that people were being allowed, asylum seekers were being allowed in, we began to seek out why, where were they? And so for the last couple of years, along with the Sisters of St. Joseph's, we've known that they've been staying and waiting in this shelter across the border in Mexicali. And so I invited all these other people to come and see and experience what the border was like, to come and experience a day in this border town, and also to do the crossing, to meet with the people, to listen to the people. And if for those who may not know why the asylum seekers have been stuck at the border, it was due to a law called Title 42. You see, people have the right to come and seek asylum. They seek asylum because of a political protection that they're running away from their country. And because once they get here, they cannot return. Persons usually may request asylum from the US when they arrive at the border. At any port of entry, they can request asylum. But this wasn't happening. Even though under international and domestic law, people in need of protection have the legal right to seek asylum in the US, this was not happening during the pandemic. So Title 42 was implemented right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it restricted many of these people from being allowed to even get to the border. So it was important for us as people of faith to continue reaching out to the shelters who were receiving them in the other side. A lot of them were stuck for months, and without even being able to approach any of the officials at the border. Next slide, please. So this is the shelter in Mexicali. I cannot even describe the rundown facility they're in. But yet you see all these happy faces, especially when newcomers come, because that means they see new faces. They know there are gonna be activities to be done. The moms will have somebody else to talk to. It was just a joyful day. So yeah, that's exactly what we did. Next slide. We did some activities with the children. We visited with the adults and had a wonderful time, a good 3 hours, just sharing stories, hearing them, acknowledging their presence, and reminding them that, there are people like all of us who pray for them, who want to see the system of oppression gone. Next slide, please. We also blessed them at the end. We blessed them on their journey. We reminded them that God is their Father as much as it is our Father. And so we wish them well. We hope the best for them. And we send them off with this blessing. And they also blessed us as we were coming back home. Next slide. As part of the pilgrimage, we also held a prayer service right in front of the Imperial Detention Facility in Calexico. This is one of the largest facilities there in that region. And usually After people ask for asylum, they spend a couple of days in the hielera, and a lot of the times they transfer mostly men into this facility where they can stay for months and months until somebody visits them, hears their story, connects them to a lawyer, and is able to advocate for their release. As you can see, we also notified some of the local faith communities, and they came out to pray with us that on this important day. And we heard the stories of people who had been impacted by this detention facility. Because after all, transformation is about listening, deep listening to those that are being affected by the oppression, and them sharing their dreams of what could be, so that we, those who are able to bring their voices back to our elected officials, ask those elected officials for that transformation that they so desperately pray for. Next slide. We also visited the cemetery for the unknown immigrant. And this is where we had a nice ritual, a ritual of remembrance, a ritual of letting even those that have passed know that we know them, that we were sad for them. These are usually immigrants who died at the crossing and trying to get across. They have to cross the desert and they die. There's right behind that green fence are many of these marked graves, and there's no name on the graves. So we held this ritual of remembrance in their name, and we sang a song, and we sang with them and for them. And it was a very powerful moment, because as you can see, even at death, there is this wall separating them. There is unmarked graves, so that here in the US, we do not acknowledge that we allow these people to die, because we do not recognize humanity in them. Next slide, please. So, a lot of the times people might ask, or I've been told, wow, your job is super hard. You get to listen to all these stories, and there's so much sadness and trauma, Hilda. But to people like them, it makes a big difference. So I'm going to invite you to share. We're going to look at this video. This woman is just very grateful and very moved by the fact that we came across and we play with the children and listen to their stories. So, Maria Elena, can you play it, please?
En nombre de todos los que estamos aquí, les damos las gracias por todo lo que han hecho ustedes con nosotros. Que Dios se los multiplique miles de veces y que Dios los bendiga. Gracias.
And it was very quick. On it, she just says, thank you very much for coming. There was a band this day that came and played for them and kind of made a happy ambience on this day. But she was just saying, we're so grateful. I am so grateful and feel the blessing that you bring from God to us on this day. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making us feel human again. Next slide. Or maybe we can stop. Maybe we can stop it right now, Maria Elena. Yeah, let's stop it. Because I wanted to remind people, that no matter what, I'm a Catholic woman, but I work with many faiths, various faiths. And one thing I can tell you is that no matter what faith tradition, all sacred texts calls for all of us to take care of the orphan, the widower, and the stranger. In our own tradition, Catholic tradition in Exodus, we are reminded to heed the stranger's treatment, because the feeling of a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I also have to acknowledge that nowadays, these stories of these strangers, of these immigrants asking our help, never makes it to the news. Unless it is to hear how we are demonizing them and their governments, planting the seed of fear and justifying the anti-immigrant policies here that our government is so happy to implement constantly. And so that makes me very sad. But the calling for us is to lift up the stories, to let our elected officials know that it can be very different. What I have seen these past couple of years when we talk about the crisis at the border, I have seen that it is our government that has created this immigration crisis. They created by refusing to see migration as something natural. It is our government that continues to create chaos and crisis at the border. And it is done with political strategy and the intent to profit for immigrants. Yes, there is profit to be made. Some corporations like the GEO facility that runs the Adelanto Immigrant Detention Facility in the city of Adelanto charges the Office of Homeland Security. They enter into a contract with the Office of Homeland Security where Homeland Security pays $145 per person per day to be able to detain immigrants in detention facilities. Those contracts are paid by your tax money and my tax contribution. And I don't know about you, but I think it's immoral. I believe it is wrong. The U.S. annually, this past fiscal year, spent $25 billion on border enforcement and ICE, only to deter and criminalize people seeking our help. We certainly have the means to respond humanely and welcome immigrants with dignity. We have the money. They probably just need us to remind them that we can welcome everybody. We can allow these spaces for people to come, to rest, to restore, and to figure out how to move forward in their lives. It is up to all of us to ask that our taxes are used for the common good of all and not continue to deter, to criminalize, and to cause harm to those seeking our help. And with that, I finish my little presentation, and I'm going to invite Ipiani, my colleague, who will kind of lead us on these reflections.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Ipiani Lockhart. I'm the faith organizer within the Inland Empire for Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity. I hope that this evening treats you well. I will be reading these reflections, and you feel welcome to put your response in the chat. Thank you. What was awakened within you? How has your perspective been enhanced?
I assume you are formulating a question, right, for us? Okay.
Sí.
Well,
Si le gustaría, estas son las reflexiones, son dos preguntas y me parece que vamos a ponerlo en el chat.
okay.
So what we'll do is we will, if you want to share a reflection, please feel free to type it on the chat so that we can share. Si tiene una reflexión, por favor escríbala en el chat y tenemos más oportunidad de que todos compartan. So some of us have written, we are all children of God, one human family. Compassion and the recognition of our shared humanity has awakened within me. Refuerzo mi idea de un mundo mejor para todos. I am reinforcing my idea of a better world for all of us. The biblical message common to Jews, Islam, and Christians comes from our being strangers, and blessing comes from welcome and hospitality.
And Miss Mary Stockwell, we do have several call to action items.
Feel like we can begin with that now? Should I?
Sounds good.
Thank you for sharing, everyone. Here we go.
So our first one, Title 42 ended May 10th, and May 11th, we reverted back to Title 8, which allows people now to get close to the border and ask for asylum. But our government, in knowing that there was going to be this backlog of people, created an application, and now everybody, all, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of economic backgrounds, they needed to acquire a smartphone, download an application, and fill out this application before going to the border and have a meeting with people. We understand it's very chaotic. Once people receive their date for meeting with this ICE officer, they need to stay within, I believe, like 15 radius miles, just so that when they're called, they can come up front and meet with the ICE officer. Well, the heat is upon us, the summer heat is upon us, and people are suffering, waiting as they seek this appointment at the border. So we have heard that they have allowed some of these families to cross over. Usually these families that are allowed to cross over, they have family waiting for them, or they have family members who will receive them. One thing we can do is to make sure that our city and our county has a plan to receive an influx of newly arrived migrants and to provide respite care and longer term needs. You know, there needs to be better coordination with local, faith, legal, and service providers. Without these legal service providers, most likely they will face many other atrocities in our communities. So contact your local elected officials and find out, how are we organizing to receive newly arrived immigrants? Sometimes all they need, in Los Angeles, they were preparing to receive some of the buses. They did an outstanding job of preparing, getting short-term respite shelters and houses of worship. So if we can only begin to organize some of our churches to receive people, that would be of great help. We can also begin to provide accompaniment in a longer term welcome. As I shared with you earlier, Misael arrived in the US when he was 17. In these past 5 years, I've been blessed to be part of that accompany team for him. His status has not changed. We are still seeking asylum for him. It is a long process, and he did not have anybody. So we were lucky enough to find him housing, and he's changed housing a couple of times, but he's a much better person here because of what we were able to help him with. And the blessings that he has given us are doubled because he is a blessing in our country and in those communities where he lives. So my organization organizes volunteers, and we call them accompaniment teams. These are people who can walk with newly arrived persons or families sometimes for the first 6 months that they're here in the US. Next slide. You can also be a housing host and provide safe shelter and stability for some of them if you're able to. While emergency responses may provide respite shelter for a few days, some new arrivals need longer, temporary, or sometimes transitional housing. So Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity in the Bay Area, we have these pool of housing hosts. And this is where we receive newly arrived people until we connect them into other type of housing. Or we also ask if people have rentals that are below the market, specifically for newly arrived families. We continue to advocate for long-term justice. Continued advocacy from people of faith is needed to restore and create protections for everyone seeking safety. And to share these stories, right? Some of the things that the people that went on this pilgrimage will at some point meet with their elected officials and share the stories of the people who were at the shelter in Mexicali. Next. We have also sent letters of faith demanding that the Biden administration enact fair and humane asylum system, not the current one that we have, and to create coordinated welcome for asylum seekers and immigrants with due legal process, where they have the ability to work, where they can find transitional and affordable housing, legal representation, medical care, and opportunities to thrive. We already know that Congress spends $25 billion annually on border enforcement. Couldn't we plant the seed of what could be and instead use the $25 billion on those items that are desperately needed for these newly arrived immigrants? And then number 5, continue to reach out. There's much needed monetary donations that can go to Border Compassion as they respond to this growing need of those immigrants who are stuck in the shelters awaiting for their one interview with the ICE officers. Next. And then also, as I hate to tell you, but there's 300 asylum seekers now who are stuck inside the Adelanto immigrant detention facility in Adelanto. If you know anything about immigrant detention, it is done with purpose. Immigrant detention is usually in a remote place far away from the local community. They try to hide it. Asylum seekers cannot reach the community outside. It is only the community outside who can try and visit them inside in order to bring them the needed support. So that is happening in Adelanto. Hopefully you guys can get involved and support by visiting people in Adelanto. We appreciate all of your prayers, your support, your feedback, your questions, suggestions. And we hope that collectively we can see an end to this system of oppression that we called our broken immigration system. Thank you all.